Good evening, friends. Let us be still a moment. Turn within. We are not here to get something from God. We are here to realize that God is the life of our very being. Tonight we are not dealing with persons or problems, but with principle, one presence, one power. Our subject: what happens when you stop being a sinner and become God's child? What if there has never been a sinner to fix, only a holy self to remember? What if the struggle to become good is the very mist that hides the good that already is? When the label sinner drops away, the war of two powers ends. In the quiet recognition, I and the Father are one, grace takes the initiative, fear yields to love, compulsion loosens. Supply is no longer a hunt, but a sufficiency. The mesmerism of I am separate lifts, and in its place there stands a simple living aware that God constitutes my being here and now. So, let us rest inwardly, not to make something happen, but to witness what already is. Close your eyes for a breath. Feel that gentle presence which needs no improvement and no defense. You are not trying to reach God. You are letting God be revealed as your very life. If this message meets you where you are, like the video, comment 111 to affirm oneness and subscribe to journey deeper with us. Now, shall we discover what unfolds the instant the word sinner disappears and only the child remains? To drop the sinner. Identity is not a moral makeover. It is awakening from a hypnotic suggestion about who you are. Sinner is a label fastened by the mortal sense, and we have worn it so long that we think it is our skin. But it is only a thought costume. You are not two, one guilty and one holy, arguing inside a single life. There is one life expressing itself as you. When the mesmerism that calls itself, I am a sinner, is seen as suggestion and not self, the burden loosens. We are not fixing a bad person, we are witnessing the presence that never fell from grace. In that light, shame has nothing to cling to. The child of God was not stained, then cleansed. The child never left the Father, and so has nothing to return from, only something to remember. How is this lived? By refusing to argue with darkness and turning quietly to the center, not as penance, but as recognition. In the stillness, we are not pleading for a better verdict. We are consenting to truth, a simple inward acknowledgement. Father, reveal thyself as my very being, dissolves the urge to rehearse yesterday's failures. Repentance becomes not self-condemnation, but a change of base from person trying to be spiritual to spirit appearing as person. Error is impersonal, a passing claim without law, substance, or lineage. When it parades as your name, do not fight it, do not wear it. Let the light of awareness rest upon it until it evaporates as mist before the sun. This is grace doing the work, not human will performing holiness. As the label falls away, conduct follows identity. Compulsions that seemed ironclad prove to be thought, habits that cannot survive exposure to one presence, one power. Where there is no second power to fear or resist, struggle ceases. We discover that goodness is not something we manufacture by effort. It is the natural overflow of being aligned with what already is. The tone of life shifts from managing guilt to witnessing grace. You notice a native softness where there was defensiveness, a readiness to forgive where there was self-protection, a resting poise in place of anxiety. This is not passivity, it is strength without friction, the authority of the Christ within, unhurried, unafraid, and unprovoked. Practice this in the moment of accusation. Whether a memory, a headline, or a voice within says, "There goes the sinner, be still." Ask, who hears this? The self that hears is not the one accused, it is awareness itself, untouched. From that holy anonymity, let a quiet assurance arise. I am not the author of sin or the victim of it, I am the witness of God being God. No formulas are needed, only the willingness to abide. If words appear, let them be simple acknowledgments of what is eternally true, used not to change God, but to yield to God. I and the Father are one, I am hid with Christ in God. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. In that consent the old name falls away, and with it the nervous haste to deserve love quiets. where the heart discovers a native innocence that does not deny past facts but denies their authority to name you. This is identity redeemed from imagination alone. Divine sonship is the next note, not a title bestowed after good behavior, but the fact of being that shines when the fog thins. I and the Father are one is not a boast, it is a report from the center. It does not set up a privileged person, it dissolves the person as center and reveals the presence as all. Sonship is the transparency of the self through which the life, that is God, looks out and lives itself. To realize it is not to achieve likeness to God, but to relinquish unlike thoughts until likeness reveals itself as the only fact. Begin where you are. Inhale and notice that life breathes you. Exhale and admit that the current sustaining you is greater than your plans. Say within, not to persuade but to remember, the Father within me doth the works. Let those words turn your attention from the surface actor to the indwelling actor. Feel how strain loosens when you are no longer author, manager, or judge. Sonship is the end of self-authorship. It is the end of trying to live life and the start of letting life be what it is as you. This realization clarifies prayer. No longer is prayer a list to a far-off throne. It becomes beholding a quiet, steady gaze into the already present completeness of God. In that beholding, the sense of two powers fades. There is not a needy you and a reluctant deity, there is one being recognizing itself. From that recognition, issues of conduct, supply, what in guidance emerge naturally, the way a river knows its bed without maps. The right word, the right restraint, the right door opening appear as the effortless choreography of one mind knowing its own. Consider how Jesus walked. He did not claim a private pipeline. He testified to a universal relation, my doctrine is not mine. The works that appeared were signs of what always is when the veil of separateness is thin. Divine sonship is not exceptional status, it is normal being rediscovered. Every time you drop the self, sense that competes, defends, or fears, the child comes to view. Grace does not come from outside, it rises from within as your own peace, wisdom, and love, because the source and the expression are one. Practice brief, sincere pauses through the day. Before a task, touch that inner silence and acknowledge the one life as the doer. During conversation, listen from the quiet center rather than from the anxious commentator. When tempted by hurry, remember that the infinite is never late, and so the child of the infinite need not rush. These small consentings accumulate into a durable awareness that travels with you into meetings, kitchens, and streets. Obstacles will appear as suggestions of separation. I am alone. I must fix this. I am failing. Meet them with gentle truth. Ask, who is the I that is alone? Notice that pure awareness remains untroubled. From that untroubled place, let the assurance arise that the one presence is here as understanding, provision, and order. As trust deepens, you find yourself acted upon by love more than acting, moved more than moving, carried more than carrying, and gently available to whatever love is being in this moment, without strain or self-importance or the urge to hurry from that availability. A further clarity dawns, one presence, one power, no second self. This is not a slogan to push against trouble. It is the simple gaze that notices there is only God being God, and nothing outside that isness to oppose, distort, or divide it. Two-ness is the dream, a God to be sought and a self to do the seeking, a good power and a bad power wrestling over outcomes. In realization, the wrestling ring vanishes. Presence is not one of many, it is the all. Power is not a force among forces, it is the only causation law, and life there is. The carnal mind, as Scripture names it, is not a mind but a hypnotic suggestion of apartness, impersonally repeating, there is another something. When you do not agree, its battery is removed. How is this lived when appearances press? A symptom shouts, a bill arrives, a relationship strains. If you meet appearance with counter force, you strengthen the belief in two powers. Instead, retire inwardly and behold God alone is as substance, as law, as activity. Not words hurled at a condition, but a quiet consent to what eternally is. In that beholding, fear begins to unwind because it no longer has a second presence to fear. The recognition is gentle. There is no life, law, or mind in the appearance. What stands before you is a picture without principle, a ripple on the surface without depth. You are not fixing a thing, you are withdrawing belief from unreality and resting in the fact of one. No second self follows naturally. There is not a private me managing God, nor a vulnerable me awaiting rescue. The I that knows one presence is the very presence knowing itself. This ends both pride and self-pity. You find you cannot be insulted into reaction or flattered into vanity because the center has shifted from personhood to presence. Conversation changes. Instead of a defended self meeting other defended selves, the Christ meets the Christ. Forgiveness becomes recognition, seeing through the mask without making the mask a power. Boundaries and guidance appear without conflict as the wisdom of one mind ordering its own. Carry this into practical moments. Before you pick up the phone, pause. One presence goes before me as me in me. While reading a headline, refuse the hypnotism of spectacle. There are not two powers in this scene. There is only the law of God expressing as justice, mercy, and order, even if human history has not yet caught up with what is true. With the body, let go of the fear that organs or chemistry possess a separate law. The law of spirit is the law of your being. As sunlight needs no argument to end darkness, realization needs no strain to dissolve what has no law to sustain it. Do not turn on presence, one power, into a mental club. Treatment is not thought power, it is the still realization that God is on the field and there is no opposing side. Words may help open the door. God is the life of all being. God is the only law. There is nothing to oppose God. But the work is the silence after the words, where you feel the hush of the one eye. In that hush, the pulse of omnipresence is sensed, and with it a quiet authority that does not need to win because nothing is lost. That does not need to convince because truth is self-evident when the noise subsides. From that hush, it becomes plain that grace does the doing and effort recedes. Human will can polish appearances, but it cannot alter nature. A pear tree does not strain to bear pears, it bears because it is a pear tree. In the same way, behavior flows from being. When you stand in the light of what you are, God expressing as you, the conduct, outcomes, and timing that once demanded strain begin to emerge as the effortless fruit of indwelling life. By grace are ye saved is not a theological slogan, it is a description of how reality functions. Grace is the activity of God as your very life. Effort is the activity of a self trying to add to what God already is. This turns the usual order upside down. Instead of fixing behavior to feel spiritual, you consent to being and watch behavior align. Discipline remains, but it is no longer a grim campaign. It becomes a glad cooperation with what is already moving. You find yourself released from the treadmill of self-improvement and ushered into the quiet rhythm of self-revelation. The inner posture shifts from, "How can I get better?" to "How can I be clearer?" Clarity comes not by mental mechanics, but by resting attention in the presence until the fog thins and the next right step appears of itself. Practice simple receptivity. Before a task, pause. Father within, be the self as this call, this meeting, these hands. Feel for the tone of stillness that carries no strain. Move from that tone. If agitation rises, do not wrestle with it. Sink back into the awareness of one presence doing the works. Effort tries to produce outcomes. Grace unveils what is already true at the level of principle. When you shift from producing to unveiling, burdens lighten. What looked like resistance was often only the friction of self-doing. In relationships, notice the difference. Effort tries to be loving by technique. Grace reveals love as the very atmosphere and your part as transparency. Words soften without calculation. Listening deepens without strategy. Forgiveness ceases to be a project and becomes recognition the same life lives here, and it is safe to let it speak. In supply, effort chases channels, grace rests in source. Ideas appear, doors open, but the sense of clutching for security yields to an assurance that the one who is your life is the order, timing, one provision of your day. Scripture's images become practical. Consider the lilies is not advice to be irresponsible. It is an invitation to trust the sufficiency of being. Lilies do not arrange their beauty, they express their nature. When you abide, expression takes care of itself. You discover that many habits were not chains but echoes. When the central tone is love, the echoes fade. Old reactions lose their fuel because the me they fed is no longer seated at the controls. Watch for the signs of slipping back into effort. Hurry, tension in the chest, mental rehearsals, the urge to convince. Let these be bells calling you home. Return to a brief, honest silence. Acknowledge, I do nothing of myself, the Father within doth the works. Wait until you feel the felt sense of ease, then proceed. Action taken from ease carries authority without force. It may be swift or slow, but it does not scrape the soul. Over time, this becomes a way of walking. First the inner consent, then the outer step. Being precedes behavior. What behavior becomes sacrament. Ordinary movements shot through with the light of the one doing them through your from here. The way you meet mistakes changes. Impersonalize error abide as consciousness. Error is not a person, a place, or a thing. It is a suggestion without principle, a draught of wind rattling an unlocked door. The moment you fasten it to me or them, you give it furniture to sit in. When you see it as suggestion, unbound and lawless, its posture collapses. Scripture's carnal mind is not a mind at all, but the whisper of separation pretending to have authorship. Do not argue with a whisper. Recognize its nature and let it pass in the light. Impersonalizing error is not evasion or excuse. It is the only way to touch the root instead of trimming branches. Condemnation personalizes the claim and cements it. Compassion sees through it and frees the one wearing it. When anger flares, notice the thought. Here is the old story presenting itself. Do not push it down or play it out. Acknowledge, this is not I, this is a suggestion passing through awareness without law to persist. Turn to the felt sense of presence. In that turning, the heat loses fuel because the me it feeds has stepped out of the costume. With the body, the same practice applies. A symptom arrives with urgency, announcing power. Meet it without fear or bravado. Quietly recognize there is no life law or sensation in a picture. Life law and sensation belong to God, the substance of being. Do not wrestle the appearance, withdraw belief and rest. Often, an intuitive adjustment or practical step will present itself, but it comes without panic, as the wisdom of one mind moving its own manifestation. In supply, when personality frees you from the personal chase, shortage thoughts will tell their credible tale. Hear them as echoes, not facts. Return to the awareness that sources present as consciousness, and that channels are the play of that source, not the source itself. Ideas, introductions, and opportunities arise as grace, not as trophies of nervous strategy. Practice a simple rhythm. Pause in any disturbance. Stop inwardly. Let one breath carry you from the surface to the center. Witness, notice what is appearing, then notice the one who is noticing. Abide as that awareness. Clear, open, untouched. Acknowledge, silently admit the truth. One presence is here, one power is active, one mind is knowing, and let those words fall into quiet. Let love choose the next movement, if any. Sometimes it is a word, sometimes a silence, sometimes a changed plan. In conversation, impersonalization softens the field. Instead of meeting a difficult person, meet a suggestion of fear or lack appearing as attitude. Refuse the bait of reaction. Listen from the belly of stillness. Words will come that address the need beneath the noise, or no words will come and your quiet will do the work. Forgiveness becomes natural because there is no one to blame, only mesmerism to be seen through. Abiding as consciousness means living from the fact that you are not a thinker pushing thoughts, but awareness in which thoughts appear and dissolve. Sit for brief intervals with no project but noticing. When a thought says, I am failing, ask, who is the I that knows this thought? The knowing is untouched. Rest as that. This is not a technique to get results. It is returning to what you are. Results, when they appear, are the overflow of alignment, not the product of effort. Think of a shadow on the wall. You can scrub the wall and rebuke the figure, and the shadow remains, or you can turn your attention to the light that renders the shadow insubstantial. Impersonalizing error is turning to the light. Abiding as consciousness is remaining where the light is until seeing is clear and the next step rises of itself, then supplies safety and serenity come into view not as external prizes but as the natural fruit of oneness. Supply is not piles and proof. It is the effortless outflow of the infinite being itself through the forms most fitting to the hour. The ocean does not strain to fill a cup. The cup simply consents to receive. When you cease chasing channels and rest in source, channels appear and dissolve without anxiety. Because supply is recognized as the activity of God, not the labor of a self maintaining a life separate from God. A salary, a client, an idea, a friend, all these are rivers. The ocean remains your sufficiency. Gratitude shifts from counting things to beholding the presence that forever includes its own provision. And the fear of, what if it stops, loosens because presence cannot stop being present. Safety reveals itself along the same line. Danger is the child of two, power thinking a vulnerable self in a hostile world. In the light of one presence, there is no second presence to threaten, no second law to invade. This does not make you reckless, it makes you responsive. The still, small voice orders steps, redirects travel, closes one door and opens another. Protection is not a force, field directed by anxiety. It is the wisdom of one mind guiding its own expression. You find yourself kept. Without superstition, an inner nudge delays your start. A sudden clarity reframes a conversation. An unexpected kindness changes the atmosphere. The habit of rehearsing worst-case futures fades because the only future there is God revealing God, and the Christ within is sufficient to each moment as it arrives. Serenity is the felt tone of this recognition. It is not passivity, nor the numbness of resignation. It is the buoyant quiet that comes when the weight of self-doing is laid down. The nervous program that checks, fixes, and guards relaxes because the universe is no longer on your shoulders. In that rest, creativity wakes. Ideas show up unhurried because they are not dragged by worry. Work takes on a Sabbath quality even midweek, first the beholding, then the doing that matches what is beheld. When disturbance knocks, you do not slam the door or host it, you open the window to the infinite invisible and let fresh air make nonsense of staleness. Make this practical. Before looking at numbers, enter the inner room and close the door. No audience, no proving. Acknowledge source is present. Supply is the movement of this presence. I cannot be outside of what I am. Then look at the numbers. Listen for the one next step. Send the email, forgive the debt, change the offering, wait a day, and take it without drama. Before stepping out, touch the quiet. I go where God is, for God is where I am. Not as a charm, but as a recognition that erases the imagination of a path apart from presence. When tempers rise, drop beneath the waves and rest in the floor of the sea. Speak from there, or not at all, allowing peace to choose its own expression. Notice how gratitude matures. It is less, thank you for this thing, and more, thank you for being. Gratitude becomes a form of beholding that multiplies because it sees the giver in the giving. And notice how generosity becomes natural. You are not bartering with the universe, you are letting the flow that sustains you continue through you as ideas, time, resources, encouragement, without fear of depletion, because the source and the expression are one.